Welcome, everyone, once again to the Roundtable, the editors and publishers podcast at the American Mind at the Claremont Institute. I am your host, Ryan Williams, president of the Claremont Institute and publisher of the American Mind and the Claremont Review of Books. I am joined by associate editor of the Claremont Review of Books, Spencer Clavin, also roving Unity of Purpose editor of American Mind and the Claremont Review of Books, keeping
Clarity of Vision editor, and I should say, of course, monarchic editor of the American Mind for this.
Divine right editor.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. The So True King editor of the American Mind.
When we're freed from the shackles of actual government, we rule in a kingly manner here at the Institute. No, I'm kidding. We rule politically. It's a project amongst friends. Another friend, of course, Mike Szabo, managing editor of the American Mind. So we thought we would start with the No Kings rally from 2 days ago. We record on Tuesdays. You'll usually hear it a day and a half later. So we're talking about Sunday's No Kings rally. It was rumored to be, at least in, Axios world, only the facts, ma'am, Axios world, the largest post-war, maybe the close to the largest post-war protest across the United States, with 7 million people and change attending it. This is the second, I think, national No Kings rally. Maybe there were some scattered regional ones before that. I mean, who cares? It's the purpose of the rally, of course, is to express displeasure with the current administration and Trump in particular. Axios has some fun facts about the average attendee of the No Kings business. You will all be shocked to learn that the average attendee at the No Kings rally was a well-educated white woman, although not exclusively that. The typical attendee at the DC protest, so this is a little narrower, of course. So these numbers, I think, will probably be slightly skewed in DC, given the makeup and the politically monolithic qualities of the district. But if you rope in the surrounding areas, maybe it's pretty representative of a blue city, probably pretty close. The typical attendee at the DC protest was an educated white woman in her 40s. Oh, 40s. Well, that's generous. Who heard about the event either through friends or via Instagram, according to preliminary data collected by American University. 7 million people nationwide, as I already mentioned. 86% of the surveyed protesters in DC were white, and 57% were women. Oh, that's where I got the 57-year-old number. 57% were women. This is.
I love this quote so much.
Me too.
Ryan.
It's amazing.
It's like slavering with anticipation for you. Please go on.
Yeah. So Dana Fisher, professor at American University School of International Service, said the following: "It makes sense that we're not seeing people of color in the streets because people of color are being disappeared."
It gets better every time. I'm sorry. It's funnier like the fifth time over.
She said she's surprised, though, that women's rights and reproductive rights are no longer leading factors the way they were during Trump's first term. As I may think all of our listeners recall, the big DC protest at the beginning of the first term, or maybe it was inauguration, was the Cat Women's March. A lot fewer people nationwide than this, for obvious reasons. Really, it was just a DC phenomenon. 47% of participants reported hearing about the rally from friends or family members, followed by 26% who heard about it on Instagram. Trump at 80% and immigration at 74% were protesters' top motivations for participating. I thought this was actually interesting as a standout fact. An overwhelming majority of respondents said they felt anger, anxiety, and sadness about, quote, politics and everything they associate with it, end quote. The median age of participants of Saturday's protest in DC was 44 years old. What we're basically seeing now is repercussions of young people feeling completely disenfranchised from our politics and our democracy, Fisher said. I don't know how they draw that conclusion from the age range and demographics of the DC protest. But I guess the one silver lining for fans of the Claremont Institute and the American Mind, a decidedly thin sliver of a silver lining. At No Kings in DC on Saturday, 23% of people agreed with the statement that Americans may have to resort to violence in order to save our country, down from 40% at No Kings in Philadelphia in June, 35% at Hands Off, protests in April, and 33% at the People's March in January. Obviously reflecting, I suspect, some people's rightful reticence in this political crowd at the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So a declining share of folks, although much too high still, agreeing that we have to resort to violence in order to save our country, I suppose, is somewhat of a silver lining. I guess I'll just one editorial comment. This movement, somewhat directionless as it is and shifting as it is, it's hard to think what sort of impact it's going to have other than performative social media from the likes of the Lincoln Project and Robert Reich, the Lilliputian Clinton advisor. So I don't know. I mean, what does this signify other than the left's continuing skill at organization, which they have demonstrated in recent years at various points? I don't know. It's some performative, also social media from the likes of Chuck Schumer and others. I don't know. What do we make of this? Do you guys have any more hilarious things to tease out?
I have a meta comment about the hilarity. Some people have remonstrated with me online for taking the attitude that this is all absolutely a giant joke and exceptionally funny in every one of its particulars, right down to the middle-aged cat lady demographic of your average attendee and her just stupendously clueless quotes about how the the people of color being disappeared and that's why we're all white. People have been saying to me, no, don't make fun of this, don't make light of it. There are millions of people in the streets, and whether you agree with them or not, whether you find them silly or not, they represent an actual political force that the right will have to contend with. This is not a silly joke. This is a major political movement. To which my response, like the girl in the meme, is why can't it be both? The absurdism of this act and demonstration and the truly preposterous presumption behind it that we're living through some kind of fascist takeover of the United States. Whatever you may think about Trump's good moves, his bad moves, his oversteps, his missteps, even steel manning the case against Trump, it does not seem to me like a viable political attitude that a serious person might hold, that he intends on or would even be capable of engineering an autocratic coup and remaining in office indefinitely or overthrowing our constitutional system. The whole premise of the thing is inherently risible. And at the same time, it is the case that many ill-informed people are vulnerable to an inherently risible view on the world. This has been true long before Trump 2.0. This was part of the demonstrations, I suppose I should say. I'm confusing it with Riot, which I think is the name of a band. But in any case, this has been the case. This has been going on for a while, right? I mean, the person that you identified, Ryan, in that article is basically the real life version of Jessica Chastain's character in the abortive program Savant. This like kind of wide-eyed, earnest, giant glasses wearing, so you know she's very smart, investigator of domestic terrorism who finds and stops anti-American plots by searching neo-Nazi Reddit boards. I mean, this is how I think many people in these sorts of protests envision themselves. It is ridiculous. It also feels to me, and this is a purely subjective reaction, more fake than the resistance of Trump 1.0. And this is a theme we visited before. Where is the resistance? Where's the enthusiasm and the spirit that really did animate the left in the first Trump term? There's been some rumbling about big money funding for these No Kings protests, and I'm always a little bit skeptical of that because, of course, you know, both political parties fund movements and seek funding for movements that they believe in. So that's not in itself particularly disqualifying. But this does feel astroturfed. I did not walk around Nashville last weekend and sense that there was a groundswell of movement rumbling all around me with the potential to affect major political change in the way that I did when 2020 was happening and all over the place in cities, both blue and red, there were there was serious unrest going on. So I do think that there are many people who are kind of suckers for this sort of narrative. But I also feel that the wind has kind of gone out of their sails, and that history is now repeating itself as farce. First time as resistance, second time as farce. But you guys can tell me if I should take this more seriously, I guess.
No, I'm kind of with you, Spencer. I mean, is it astroturfed in a sense? I mean, yes. I kind of hesitate. That language, I think that absolutely is the case. At the same time, sure, there are bunches of people who actually believe this garbage. I mean, that that professor, who said, people of color being disappeared. I mean, I absolutely laughed out loud reading that comment. It's just such academic jargon, like meaningless, just like inane gobbledygook that typically comes from the mouths of these people. So I mean, they're living in some like alternate reality, like you said, where like and the conflation too between no kings. What they actually really want to say is they're equating kings with like tyrants and dictators. Like these are all different things. I mean, even like divine right monarchy is different from monarchy in other senses. So it's this conflation of everything they don't like. It's highly telling that Trump is, I mean, 80% of why these people came out. Micah Meadowcroft, I think, said, and this is to your point, Ryan. I mean, he said he looked at the No Kings rallies that he was at, and he said the average age to him looked like it was almost close to 70. And that I think is probably a little bit more believable than 44. My dad actually went to saw one, drove by one in a suburb of Cleveland, and he kind of said the same thing. I mean, there was no one below 50, maybe even 60 in sight. So you have to wonder too, the Venn diagram, the crossover between these people and are they active voters? I would guess most of these people are highly active in their own Democratic Party circles, are highly active on the left. Sure, there were some people who just check out Instagram, hate Trump and whatever, aren't active in politics, but I would bet the core of this by far are hardened party activists who have been out there for a very long time, who, politics is just in their blood and this is just what they do. So this is a normal Saturday, basically. They probably, instead of bar hopping, they're activist hopping, they're rally hopping. So this is just, I think, very typical of probably their lifestyle. I saw that I even hesitate to even name this guy, but David French, who obviously now is a columnist at the New York Times, used to be at National Review. He said he went to the No Kings rally in Chicago, peaceful crowds, families were there, people of all ages, lots of homemade signs. Soros apparently needed to up the signage budget. So, pointing a little bit of fun at the AstroTurfed idea. Huge gap between GOP scary rhetoric and completely peaceful rally. There was actually someone else who actually pointed out, I think, a picture of that same rally, and there were like signs like F ICE, all kind of things that I can't even say on this podcast. So it's kind of ironic that French is obviously whitewashing everything on his side now. Obviously, clearly a man of the left now, and
Self-proclaimed judge, jury, and executioner, at least in the pages of the New York Times, of all things decent.
Right. I mean, supposed moral arbiter, and he obviously conveniently overlooks everything that he doesn't want to see. So is this the rumblings of some big movement that could translate into Democratic Party wins in 2026? I don't know. I mean, I would guess, again, I would guess probably not. I mean, there's obviously some energy, but it'd be interesting to just see, how many people showed up for the Tea Party rallies in 2011, 2012. And you look at all that energy there, and, Mitt Romney got, pretty much blown away in the 2012 election. So I need to see more evidence. I need to see more signs that this is actually something worth worrying about.
Yeah, I want to cite a very good follow on Twitter X, which is Gray Zone Intel, at Gray Zone Intel, which is Mike Shelby, a former intelligence officer. Not sure if that's his real name, doesn't matter. And he, I think a week out, said that this No Kings movement will be very good for Democrats because it's this long list of very activated people who will help you knock on doors and get out the vote across the country. And so it's sort of a gold mine for political organizing. And so we might regard that as one of the chief reasons that they're doing it, is to collect more and more names for the turnout operation in the midterms. And I think that's completely plausible. But he also said today, and he was just screenshotted this post or this article that said, it doesn't matter who the author is, get used to saying the largest peaceful protest in American history a lot. You will hear me saying that a lot. his response was, if the No Kings protest really mobilized 7 million people, why do you need to continually reinforce that as fact and mythologize it? Because this is a conditioning belief in a lie. No Kings wasn't anywhere near 7 million people. And then Data Republican, another good follow, which many of you know, I'm sure, had this compelling case to make in 2 quick paragraphs on X. The 7 million figure is their magic number because it crosses an imaginary 3.5% threshold of registered voters used in political science. But that number doesn't hold up. In New York City, turnout was about 50,000. In Los Angeles, roughly 200,000. Together, those two cities represent around 30 million people, which translates to maybe 3 million participants nationwide at most. And that's assuming rural and suburban areas turned out at the same rate as urban centers. Realistically, there's no way the total comes close to 7 million. So, yeah, I mean, there is a kind of the lady doth post too much aspect to this, that the continual repetition of the immense and unprecedented size of this in the normal mainstream media is cause for great skepticism.
I had the biggest protest, the biggest peaceful protest in American history, and nobody's ever seen a protest so big or so peaceful. Yeah, it is an interesting response to Trump's own way of like kind of self-mythologizing, and that part of it, you're making me think about this, Mike, does seem astroturfed, namely the vision of a united American left, all American left, that they're trying to extract from this, which is the point of the No Kings thing, right? To us, it looks ridiculous, and again, it is absurd to assume that Trump is going to try to become a monarch or a dictator or whatever autocrat type they think he's going to be. But they want to position their resistance to Trump as in the spirit of American anti-monarchic revolution, right? From 1776 on up to bizarrely the Second World War. I think I've seen some branding that says, well, first we kicked King George out, then we punched the fascists in the face and we defeated Hitler, and now it's time to usurp the duly elected president of the United States. This won't wash, and very much is an attempt to counterbalance what's really going on the left, which is something we'll soon discuss, I think, because we're about to talk about Zohran Mamdani, right? The Democrats have, and they have had since Trump's major second victory, this very serious problem that all the energy on their side is with a radical young contingent that genuinely hates America and is increasingly openly willing to say so. It's part of their philosophy. It's not just embedded in the implications of their rhetoric. It's actually what they write in the 1619 Project, and it's what they say about the American economic system, etc. And so that's where the true, I think, mimetic attraction is. Like the branding power is all there, and the youth vote is kind of flocking there. But the country at large is kind of repulsed by that and has shown that it's repulsed by that. And also these boomer rebels who imagine themselves as the inheritors of the legacy of the 70s want to be able to think of themselves as rebelling in the name of the true America, the true spirit of democracy and republicanism. And so I think this is above all else, a kind of branding exercise, an attempt to portray the modern Democratic Party in its resistance to Trump as some kind of all American patriotic dissent movement, when in fact it's a captured and an increasingly radical party whose actual rhetoric implies a much darker and more violent kind of politics than they're willing to admit to yet.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. This is kind of the surface level narrative that the Democrats present, that they are just in a long line, extended from George Washington through especially Thomas Jefferson. And this is just, they are what progress has entailed since the American founding. And they are, but that's obviously set upon this absolutely rotting, corrupt foundation with 1619 Project and everything that absolutely assails the founders and the founding, and the America is only good basically because of how far we've come since the founding. So you have these two things that are completely at odds. I think another thing too, yeah, I think So really diving into the Democrats' way of framing things and their rhetoric just shows, honestly, how devious they are, of course, but honestly, how political they are, actually, in a way that I think Republicans still have a very hard time outside of Trump matching and understanding at any kind of level. You look at I wanted to zoom in on the whole, like, peaceful riot. I mean, that is obviously, was tested and thought about, and consultants thought about this. I mean, this is obviously to push back against Charlie Kirk, against the idea that the left is violent. And so you have David French, you have all these people say, oh, this was so peaceful. You have it on CNN, MSNBC, ABC, Fox News, wherever. I mean, peaceful, peaceful, peaceful. So this is all just clearly showing, I think, why the Democrats, why we absolutely should not write them off, why they're still clearly a danger. I mean, and, the people they have in their back pocket, the megaphone that they still have. So these are things that I think Republicans still need to contend with.
If people want to go look up, I would say the most systematic case for the rise of monarchical Trumpism, I suppose. Now, to their credit, they do say that the rise of this imperial monarchical presidency has been a problem for many, many years. I recommend this Axios piece. Another Axios piece. They're easy to read and bullet pointy, so it captures a lot of information quickly. Behind the curtain, the most unprecedented presidency in 250 years. And they go through emergency powers, declarations of emergencies. They go through the birthright citizenship stuff, crack down on the free press, whether through, and I'm just using their terms, whether through Trump personally suing news outlets or dismantling agencies. They have that on there too. Now, the thing that struck me about this is they really couldn't, they tried to do the historical analogy game. And according to them, on their own terms, this is the most unprecedented history in the post-war era, I would argue, which I think is pretty telling, because if you go back to an older America when constitutionalism was much more a respected phenomenon and had much more widespread agreement between the major parties, we can table, of course, the Civil War, as we always should. So their unprecedented presidency is really rejecting the post-progressive era way of doing government in America. And that's why many of us were attracted to and very interested in the Trump administration, because our scholars and others had long been arguing that given the rise of the administrative state, and especially its huge expansion in the 60s with the unholy alliance of the welfare state and the civil rights regime sort of paired at the hip, and the transformation of the budget process and Congress's corruption and all the rest. We have reached a kind of apogee of the presidency. That's certainly true. And their main complaint seems to be that the Trump administration is taking all these accumulated powers that reside in the presidency from the last 100 years or so and pushing them to the hilt in order to, under their own understanding, that is the Trump administration's understanding, in order to restore some semblance of constitutionalism, whether it's in their attacks on the administrative state or their attempted revival of presidential impoundment of funds especially which he thinks have been appropriated unconstitutionally or are dedicated to unconstitutional stuff, or the restoration of a Department of Justice that really works for the president rather than this different operation we've had since the Watergate era of the DOJ being a kind of independent law enforcement mechanism within the presidency. So in many ways, restoration is what's unprecedented. And they're right in a way. This kind of aggressive restoration is pretty unprecedented, especially in the post-war era. And they point out a few blips where the Reagan administration or the George W. Bush administration tried to push back against this modern arrangement or otherwise act, I think, with constitutional impropriety or drunkenness or something. But it's revealing. I would just read through that list if I were you and see what you think of many of their claims. It's useful because unlike the vague opinions of random marchers at No Kings, this is kind of the academic and journalistic case for why this presidency deserves your opprobrium and alarm about what it's up to. Whereas a lot of us look at it and say, maybe some envelopes are being pushed in ways that when we return back to normal, we wouldn't want anymore. And a lot of the things that they object to, they admit are statutorily authorized by Congress. So a lot of this stuff could be fixed if Congress were inclined to fix it. But the whole phenomenon, I think, is among other things, a bunch of confused categories on each side or people talking past one another. So in that sense, it's just a microcosm of our bigger disagreements about everything from human nature to rights to the common good. Well, we beat No Kings to death, I think. We'll wait for its next eruption. And
And
it'll
in
be,
fact,
yeah.
I just looked outside the door and there are no kings
There's no
in America. It's amazing. So I think we really solved it. America is now king free.
We were trading jokes about it on the Roundtable Signal chat. And I pointed out that the funniest thing I saw was a bunch of Canadians protesting no kings because they hate Trump too, when they literally technically still have a king.
They have an
kind of.
actual king.
They have
Yeah.
So bad.
a king with a lot less power than the American president, but still.
I will say that this podcast, on the other hand, has not one, not two, but three kings on it.
Triumvirate.
Yeah, it's a round table of kings.
And unlike the triumvirate at the end of the Roman Republic, we're not conspiring to kill each other. So it's a pretty healthy triumvirate.
I must ask you to speak for yourself, sir. That you know.
Right.
Spencer's always running at least 3 different Machiavellian plots. Usually not all against me, against others too.
My cuddly exterior is all part of my serpentine machinations.
He's in the city-state of Nashville.
That's
Introducing new modes and orders as we speak. Yes.
Precisely so. Not founded in airy abstraction or in imagination, but in hard, cold reality.
You would think, though, sometimes I come up with good segues. I'll leave the listeners to judge this, but you made me think, Mike, about the left draping themselves in the principles of the founders, that they have situational ethics on founding principles. The left does, so it seems to track in a way that it doesn't on the right. Although there's plenty of hypocrisy on the right too, but it seems to track in politically substantial ways and matters of national public opinion on the left, that they tend to adjust their views of presidential power and constitutionalism to suit who happens to sit in the seats in question. And another example of this is, you would think that the left would be cheering the indictment of John Bolton, which we wanted to talk about. But they're kind of vaguely protesting it as just yet another example of Trump going after his enemies. Because, of course, the left hates John Bolton for a variety of reasons and has for decades. And Bolton's been indicted on the abuse of classified intelligence. Just a couple pieces of that indictment, which is unlike a few of these others that have dropped, which were quite short, is a 26 or 27 pages. So it seems to be much more substantial. And our lawyer friend, I was just talking to, Kenan Spivak, who writes for the American Mind fairly frequently, said that it seemed to him to be the most serious of the indictments and had a lot of substance to it. And among other things, Bolton had a private email server and was hacked by a foreign power, I think the Iranians, and reported this to the authorities when it happened in July of 2021. But then they subsequently discovered he did not tell them about the other classified material he had on his private email server. So it's kind of a Hillary 2.0 email server sort of thing. Kind of ironic that the person that first gets indicted for this private email breach of national security is a Republican and not Hillary. Trump famously deciding not to pursue Hillary after he won in 2016. I will just say that for those who know how Bolton operates in the government and his general demeanor in public service, it couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. I mean, Bolton has long held the reputation of being a complete bureaucratic, maneuvering and scheming and leaking of a high energy and high IQ. Not a dumb man, an old hand in Washington, but he certainly has made plenty of enemies on both sides of the aisle over the years. That alone, of course, is not any reason to indict him. But I don't know. I think we will wait to see how the trial plays out alongside Jim Comey and others. But at least for those on the right, in an atmospheric sense, there's some satisfaction in finally seeing folks who abused their power and tried to bring down either one or both of the Trump presidencies through leaking and various sorts of sabotage. They'll have their day in court. I don't want to discount the possibility, which is frequent and ubiquitous, of federal prosecutors abusing their authority. But I think for a lot on the MAGA right, this is a satisfying turn of events. And we will judge it on the merits as we see them play out in court, I suspect.
And unlike some of the other indictments that have drawn people's skepticism, this one is not being carried out by Trump appointees, right? So it has that to suggest that there's more there. And also there's, right, the case itself. To me, the biggest question mark is, given what you've said about Bolton's character, Ryan, how is it that he ended up making a mistake quite this boneheaded? And is the answer that people just in general throughout the federal government play a bit fast and loose with classified documents, and also it's impossible to fulfill the letter of the law on classified documents for anybody, which is why this has become such a subjective tool that people wield kind of at will, right? And we've now seen several tennis matches go back and forth between, there was, you mentioned Hillary. Of course, Trump has come under fire for his handling of classified documents. Biden came under fire. Now Bolton. And it does seem like that aspect, that dimension of it, vitiates what might otherwise be a quite legitimate effort to bring a rogue actor into line. In other words, we know that Trump hates Bolton. He's pulled his security clearance. He's done all sorts of things that make it clear he's upset at the public stances Bolton has taken. That's not disqualifying in and of itself of this indictment, but it does mean that the fact it's compounded by the fact that this classified document stuff is so opaque, so murky, and so selectively enforced. But as you say, we'll just wait and see what the investigation turns up and what the result is. And certainly it's not a partisan Trump stance to say this does look like kind of bad news, bad mojo. And I do think that if nothing else, it goes again, Ryan, to your point about Congress, which we can never hammer home hard enough, that all of this chicanery and political maneuvering and the double standards and the partisanship is all downstream of us not having good laws and people to pass and deliberate on laws. Politicians gonna politician. That's part of our system. But they're supposed to be constrained by a deliberative body of small R Republican representatives. And because those guys have been falling down on the job for so long, it does feel like we're just left with, well, I hope the guys in power are kind of good guys. And in this case, we tend to think they are.
And with Bolton, I totally agree. This couldn't happen to a better person. So I think he's charged with a total of 18 counts under the Espionage Act for mishandling national defense information. I think, if I remember correctly, that's could be a total of 160 years in prison. So that would obviously be for life. I mean, I doubt that even if he's convicted that actually even happens. But I think this is really important for the rule of law. This is really important for the MAGA movement, who I think, and rightly so in many cases, just can become very cynical, saying, look, Trump's even in office and nothing is happening still. You have Republicans sending, letters to people. You have people saying words, but nothing's actually being done, and the rule of law is crumbling. So I think that this symbolically is very important. It looks like, at the same time, you have obviously Comey, that one, Comey's kind of, I think he knows his chicanery and his shenanigans. I mean, he knows things very well. So he is, I think, I could see him even getting out of that one, because Comey's facing 2 counts, 2 charges, false statement and obstruction of justice related to Senate testimony he gave. I think it was about 5 years ago. I would not be surprised if he gets out of that one. John Brennan, actually, too. The House Judiciary Committee under Jim Jordan just referred him to the Justice Department for criminal prosecution over allegations that he made false statements to Congress about his role in the Russia collusion hoax. And that's what a lot of this goes back to, too, is you have the Russia collusion hoax, you have the Mueller probe. I mean, you have just constant attacks against Trump, really from the deep state, the administrative state. And so it's very, very important that somebody actually goes down. Somebody is actually prosecuted. Somebody actually goes to jail. Hopefully even more people than one. But, and the media is trying to frame this, oh, Trump is just out for his own personal retribution. And it's like they can't even mean, obviously they're not going to see this, but it's like, no, his personal retribution is actually paired with the rule of law and justice in the United States as a whole. I mean, yes, this is going to help him because he doesn't like these guys, clearly, but this is about something way, way bigger than that. And I hopefully think, in the Bolton case, it does seem like from reading some good commentators, some people who really know this stuff, that there really is something there. So we'll see if the DOJ prosecutors are able to do what we put them there to do.
I just wanted to jump back to our previous segment because I'd forgotten two wonderfully hilarious pieces of this Axios write-up. Now, you guys maybe spot the hilarity. Feel free to burst out into laughter whenever you'd like. Number 13 and 14. So the way they set these up is they show the break of precedent. They talk about historical analogies, and then they talk about what bad precedent this sets. First, number 13, rewriting health and vaccine policy. Trump fired career health officials, slashed funding for public health research, and gave political allies broad control over FDA and CDC decisions. Historical analogy. Presidents have had major impacts on health policy before. Reagan downplayed the AIDS crisis. Yeah, no, always get a chance to kick the Gipper. George W. Bush launched PEPFAR, strange new respect for W. Obama built pandemic playbooks after H1N1, but their interventions largely worked within expert systems. Trump is the first to dismantle those systems in peacetime, sidelining scientific expertise to give political appointees direct control over vaccines and public health guidance. The new precedent, always bad. Future presidents can subordinate public health to partisan agendas, treating life or death, scientific guidance as another lever of political control. They needed an asterisk, at least about COVID, but of course none was forthcoming. And then profiteering, just about the Trump family, making money on the side during the administration. They talk about Teapot Dome and all this stuff, and they say, but those at least were hidden. This is all out in the open. This is the best part. The new precedent, bad, of course. Future presidents can treat the White House as a platform for personal enrichment, including in nascent industries for which the U.S. government is writing the rules. No, I mean, God forbid any president come in only moderately wealthy, or they and their family, and within 4 years of them exiting office, have now tripled or quintupled or 10x their national wealth. That really never happens.
Is it Aristotle who says that wealthy man is more immune to bribes? In which case, perhaps Trump we ought to welcome the advent of this real estate mogul Trump. No, I'm just glad that we've revisited the No Kings topic because we haven't yet mentioned perhaps the best part of the whole thing, which is Trump's own response, which was to post a video, AI generated video of himself flying over the protesters and dumping what the New York Times, I believe, decorously described as brown sludge. But naturally, those of us who are able to be more forthright can say clearly what it was, which was king.
Yeah, it's that is actually unprecedented. Trump's use of memes, clearly
Totally.
unprecedented.
But not his use of media, right? I mean,
No,
he's
no.
like some other transformative presidents we could name, in that he has grasped before anybody else
Yeah,
how the cutting edge media of the day works.
yeah.
And he's able to converse in it fluently, where his opponents just come across as dorks.
Right. FDR, radio, JFK, TV, Trump, social media.
Yes, thank you for actually naming the presidents that I said we could
really,
abstractly. Thanks for catching that.
yeah, really Trump and memes, because of course the Obama administration used social media to great effect in organizing and targeting turnout and all the rest. And it's an old theme of the Roundtable podcast, the extent to which social media was going to be the beginning of a new dawn of democracy until Trump used it to win office. And now it's very, very problematic. Enough on No Kings, enough on Bolton. We got to talk about the shiniest new populist in the pantheon of left-wing populism, that is Zohran Mamdani. They've now had a primary debate, at least one, maybe two, and now a general election debate with Mamdani, Sliwa, and Cuomo. And Mamdani, his performance, I sort of caught some snippets, and a lot of people have talked about this already, but he was kind of pretty defensive and had lost a bit of his charm from his signature, jump cut social media videos. looked pretty young. I mean, he always looks young. He's a kind of does not look like an old or seasoned veteran of things political or even life.
He has a boyish face.
Yeah, he's got a
Yeah.
boyish face, and I mean, I forget how old he is. I mean, he's got to be in his mid-30s. Maybe he's 40. I doubt it. But none of it matters because, barring something dramatic, like maybe Sliwa dropping out, but even then, it's pretty contestable whether Cuomo, as unpopular as he is, could pull over enough Republican votes to defeat Mamdani. He looks to be still inevitable in New York. Now, nothing is inevitable in politics. I suppose some crazy thing could happen and destroy his credibility or further erode his commanding but still plurality of voters in New York. But as we said weeks and weeks and weeks ago, Mamdani is the future of left-wing populism in our cities, and so far it looks to be working.
Like you said, Ryan, I mean, he's up, the Real Clear Politics average right now, he's up 17.4 points. I mean, I think the Fox News poll had him up plus 24. I think, like you said, even if Sliwa drops out, Cuomo, with how, his political name has obviously been tarnished greatly, I just cannot see anything other than, what looks to be absolutely inevitable happening right now. But you have some interesting things coming out. You had JD Vance tweet about this New York Post piece that showed Mamdani with a Brooklyn imam, Siraj Wahaj, who is an unindicted co-conspirator in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, who's been linked to other terrorist activity in the U.S. So this guy actually testified in support of the Blind Sheikh at the time, who was the leader of the terrorist sect out of Egypt. We called him a respected scholar, much like the editors of the Washington Post, who for some reason seem to have a soft spot for terrorists. This imam, he's got 3 adult children who are convicted. This is Andy No reported this. 3 adult children who were convicted in 2023 for their role in operating a jihadist training camp in New Mexico, where a young child was killed. So these are the kind of people he's surrounding him with. Mike Solana, I thought this was great, from Pirate Wire, said he represents the bottom feeders and mentally unstable socialists who've slowly taken over the city, and Cuomo and Sliwa, on the other hand, are representing basically everyone else. And that's the problem. Is it's too late. Cuomo and the Democrats, I mean, you have Eric Adams. I mean, they just completely fumbled this campaign. I don't think they took him seriously enough. And to go back to Mamdani's age too, he's 34, so very young guy. Bill Ackman now is out there calling for Sliwa to drop out of the race, which again is I think absolutely meaningless at this point. Sliwa himself has said he's been given money to drop out of the race. And Sliwa too.
I'll drop out of the New York mayoral.
Oh yeah, right.
Come on,
right. For
I'm 2M34, so really it's a win-win.
Right.
We missed a quick opportunistic carpetbagging trip to cash in. Dang.
Precisely so. Yeah, this was our get rich quick scheme, and we fumbled the ball. But I do feel at this juncture that, with the greatest regret and truly not taking any pleasure in it, I must once again bring up Hassan Piker. It's happening. It's happening. I'm sorry. I don't choose these sorts of things. I wish I could avoid it. I know that people are rolling their eyes about this, but I actually think that's the point. A couple weeks ago, there was a sequence of events that happened in rapid succession. One is that Hassan Piker, this is this Twitch streamer, radically left-wing socialist Twitch streamer, who had Zohran Mamdani on to do a long interview, and whom I've been saying is the guy to watch as an emblem of what the future of the left looks like. He had 2 bad news cycles. One was that he went on Ross Douthat's podcast.
Interesting.
It's a terrible mistake for any shallow and idiotic modernist, but especially for somebody as genuinely unintelligent as Hassan. Ross absolutely dismantled his whole view of the world in his exceptionally and uniquely Ross Douthat way, which was to say politely, civilly, without any hostility, just by literally asking questions. Then a clip surfaced of Piker basically shock collaring his dog for getting up out of the spot, the opportune place where he's got him set up for his Twitch shot, and he was whining at the time about how it's hashtag fascism that you can't get good internet in America, which frankly I agree, it is a national disgrace. But he was saying this is why I hate this country. You can't get good internet. His adorable, I don't know, Shiba Inu, nice looking dog, stands up, moves around, and yelps suddenly, and people realize that this is basically a living creature that Piker has turned into a prop on his set by administering electric shocks whenever he moves. When these things happened, I got a couple notes from listeners to this podcast saying, you keep telling us we need to pay attention to this guy, Hassan Piker, but it looks as if he's not only callow and cruel, but also stupid. And my response was, now you're getting it. Yes, exactly so. My case for this man is not that he is intelligent, knows what's up. If he did, he wouldn't be a socialist, right? It's that he's callow, stupid, cruel, and handsome, glib, and popular, right? And this is all my very, very long-winded way of saying I raise him because that's what you're looking at with Zohran Mamdani. The exact same thing happened to Zohran Mamdani on that mayoral debate stage as happened to Hassan Piker on Ross Douthat's podcast. He went up there, he was questioned in the mildest possible way about, I don't know, how anything that he has in mind is supposed to work rather than further bankrupting the city. He had no good answers. Both alternatives to him were preferable despite their own major flaws. Sliwa especially was earnest, sincere, and knowledgeable. It does not matter. This is the thing that the youth are addicted to in these deep blue enclaves. And there's, of course, the added bonus of Democrat loyalty in New York. And this guy's going to win the mayoral race now. I mean, barring some kind of unforeseen catastrophe, as you say, Ryan, that's going to be your next mayor of New York. And New Yorkers are going to FAFO with socialism. They're going to find out what happens, right? When you really plunk for this stuff. Hopefully they will reverse course quickly. But this is the dynamic that you see in both Piker and Mamdani. It's not that they're smart. It's not that their arguments are good. It's that they have caught the tide of something which has all the momentum on the left right now. This sort of young, blithe, carefully lab curated, and actually masculine male socialism, idiotic socialism from the seminar room. And that's where the Democrat Party, I think, is going to end up going. It's a dangerous direction, both in its actual policies and what it believes, but also because it might be the successful route for the Democrat Party to take in the post-Trump 2.0 era. Piker rant over. You never need to hear me talk about it again. Just kidding. It's totally going to happen again.
Yeah, I really like Ross, I should say, Publius Fellow of Claremont from 2002, I think, a couple years before I did it. So Ross is just a couple years older than I am. He's very much worth reading. He's a very smart guy. He's always Ross likes his paycheck and has a large family and knows what he's supposed to be doing at the New York Times. And I don't mean to say he's selling out. I just mean to say he's very conscientious about trying to speak to the New York Times readership, which mostly disagrees with him on lots of issues, and kind of move the needle here and there. And his podcast is similar temperamentally. But yeah, it just took Ross very mildly questioning Piker to reveal Piker's sophomoric and mostly empty thoughts on how to reorganize American society and economics. And so if you're a consumer of podcasts, it's actually worth a listen. They're about an hour, and you can get a sense of Piker's defects, but also can be alarmed, as you should be, at Spencer's rant, because this is the future. This is the charismatic future of left-wing populism, which is mostly for now anyway, empty. I guess we should be really scared when it's a very sophisticated, intelligent demagogue and not just a slick cut-rate demagogue, although one that seems to be poised to run America's largest city.
Well, speaking as a handsome eloquent and intellectually shallow 34-year-old on the right, I have to
who eats
say.
way too much protein, like all the fascists do, right? Right, Spencer?
Precisely so. And not only do I look smacks, I'm coming for a city near you. I'm announcing my mayoral candidacy for Nashville, Tennessee. No. But yeah, this is not going away.
Well, more on all that, I'm sure, in the coming months. In the meantime, we have some cultural recommendations to close this out. So I will we'll mix it up a little bit and start with Mike this week.
Sure. So I think I told the guys yesterday, I just started reading Camp of the Saints, which just got re-released. It was
In a
obviously
new translation.
in a new translation. Nathan Pinkoski did the introduction, so it was really, I think, an expansion of his First Things piece, which was fantastic. I mean, Nathan is just one of the bright stars on the right today, so I read everything he writes. He has written for the CRB. He has written for TAM as well. So if you haven't read any of those pieces, please do. He just does great work.
Also a 2020 Lincoln Fellow at the Claremont.
Yes. Yep. But the book is, it's so infamous, I guess, now for being, some white nationalist screed, white supremacist screed, whatever. It's like you read it, it's like, wow, Raspai was like, he was an actual novelist. He knew what he was doing. I mean, the translation is very good. It made me think, there was the old kind of fight between, okay, which better describes our world today, 1984, Brave New World. David Azarad, also a fellow who teaches in our fellowship programs, I think made the case a while ago, Brave New World. I agreed. Now that I'm reading Camp of the Saints, I think that describes, that's where our authoritarian, bad future is going to be. Even far more than those two books by far, actually. And I don't think it's close. I think it really captures what's going on today in just a way, about immigration, about our population, about, the importance of a people to a nation. You see just a loss of spirit in what that does. So it is a very, very eye-opening book. I'm about probably 100 pages in. And I would recommend, if you've heard scary things about it, read it for yourself. It is now available. You don't have to pay $500 per copy anymore. Vauban Books is the publisher, and I think they've done a great job with it.
You're on a far right Frenchman kick, I noticed.
I am.
Anéantir, the new Michel Houellebecq novel. And it's
Yes.
funny when you actually get down to reading these guys who are so often presented as just completely beyond the pale. They're always these sort of mild-mannered, cigarette-smoking Frenchmen. This is also true of Renaud Camus, the guy that came up with the Great Replacement theory. Is like, oh, he was actually just a he's a French intellectual. He's sort of highly sophisticated and pulls no punches. Anyway, that's great. I have I think I have that novel in the mail, and I'm excited to read it.
Although I will say that Houellebecq has eccentric tastes, we'll put it that way. But that's also perfectly in
Also
line with
French.
French novelists.
Yeah,
Right. Also very French.
Yeah, exactly. What could be more French?
Yeah, good. Spencer, what are you up to? What you reading?
Okay, so I promised a while back that my Roundtable Rex would only be lowbrow and dunderheaded, and then proceeded to recommend like Aristophanes and an obscure pre-Socratic speech from the 5th century BC. So I'm now finally delivering and returning to my roots, which is to say, I have a recommendation for a cocktail. I've been trying to get better at making cocktails this year, and this is the season we've just had the flip into fall weather. So it is the perfect time for you and your loved ones and or your loved bartender to make a London fog cocktail. The London fog, in its original sense, is just a Earl Grey latte, basically with vanilla. Delicious drink on its own, but you can make an alcoholic version, and it's relatively easy. It's an infusion, which is to say you have to kind of seep some stuff into the liquid, but it's not one of those ones that has to be left in the freezer like overnight or whatever. I can tell you how to make it right here on this podcast. Very easy. Basically, what you do is you create a simple syrup, which is just boiling water and then adding equal parts sugar, or a little less if you like it less sweet. But in that simple syrup, while it's boiling, you put 2 to 4 Earl Grey tea bags, depending on how strong you want that flavor. Let that steep, put it in the fridge, remove it from the heat, obviously, first. And then when it's ready, add 1 part of that simple syrup to 2 parts gin with an egg white. And if you want it in the latte form, you use some heavy cream as well. If you don't, you just put in a little vanilla or a vanilla liqueur, dry shake it to let the egg white foam up, and then add ice and shake it again and pour. Terrific fall cocktail, not that hard to make.
What do you garnish it with, Spencer? Do you grate a little something on
Edible flowers, of course. What are you taking for? Actually, if you have edible flowers, that's perfect. If not, you can do a little, like, one of the actual dried vanilla beans.
Yeah.
You can garnish it with a number of things.
Mhm.
Lemon, even.
Excellent. So this is an old throwback, which was Amelia and we made up the cocktail during COVID. I think we called it what did we call it? I think we called it the ventilator, maybe in bad taste, but
Sorry, that just landed. Oh my god, what's in
Yeah.
the ventilator?
it's like it's a grapefruit vodka drink, maybe a grapefruit gin drink. I think it's grapefruit vodka. I'll have to look it up with some a little punch with the jalapenos to clear up the sinuses, and then plenty of herbs, especially cilantro and basil. It was pretty good actually, but
And just a dash of hydroxychloroquine.
that's right. Yeah. With you pour your cocktail and then throw back 3 pills of ivermectin, 3 floating ivermectins on. Seems like so long ago. Thank God. I was on vacation all last week, and normally I would be trying to read something nonfiction, but I wasn't. I was mostly wrangling children and helping my sister with her 4 children. We all had a lovely time, but the small children didn't leave much time after dinner for anything but a nightcap and bed. So I'm just going to cop out and recommend a couple pieces from the American Mind, an old tradition that we've had, but not, I grant, not exactly a cultural recommendation. But on topic, both of them for very important issues right now. And one of them, the first one I'm going to recommend, builds on the Chris Caldwell essay about the UK that I recommended. And it's written by a former Lincoln Fellow of ours, Josh Trevino, works for Texas Public Policy Foundation and has a gig also at AFPI working on Western Hemisphere stuff. And his colleague at AFPI, Kristen Ziccarelli, Britain's Last Election. It's the front piece at the American Mind right now, the subtitle of which is "The Regime Inaugurated by New Labour Will Soon End." Josh has been over in the UK a decent amount in recent months and has been talking to a lot of folks. And so some of those insights, though not cited at that level, are in there, including who's good, even on the Tories, who the Tories and Labour look to be both be poised to kind of collapse and Reform to be ascendant. But any right-wing movement in Britain is going to need to call on talent across the right wing, including some bright lights from the Tory party, even though it's been brought quite low in over the last few years. So it's a good piece worth reading. And then our colleague Will Tebow with actually a piece which I got a couple notes about from former fellows of ours who really enjoyed it. So I recommend it to you all. How America Can Lead the AI Revolution. So thank you all for indulging me the cop-out recommendation that aren't really cultural. They're just me hawking our own writings. But if you don't like it, you can go to a different podcast.
If you don't like it, why on earth are you here? It's mystifying that you would be here and not like that.
My brief shout out. It's just I'm repeating myself now, so I didn't really want to make much of it. As we are enjoying, and we're almost finished with the newest season of Slow Horses, which actually we'll talk a little bit about the interesting phenomenon of Slow Horses, which I think is most in evidence in the first season and now in this season, which is the 5th. I think it's the 5th, which is that they kind of in their first couple of episodes make some judgments through art about contemporary, kind of woke pieties, somewhat in their favor. And then as the season progresses, you realize they're kind of subtly making fun of both sides of that. This one, they're indulging a little bit too much, the kind of, scratch any right-wing populist, and there's resentment, inadequacy, and demagoguery, which is, they don't give equal treatment on the other side to the incumbent mayor in London, which is, I think, supposed to be a sort of a young Mamdani version of Razib Khan. Sorry, Razib, not Razib Khan. Sadiq Khan. I've promoted Razib to mayor of London. I will. Well, with that infelicity, I will say, go. I was on Razib's podcast, and it's now behind the paywall or in front of the paywall. So go check out Razib Khan's eclectic and interesting podcast, Unsupervised Learning. With all that, we must move on and talk to you all next week. Thank you once again for listening to the Roundtable. If you like to see more about Claremont's work, of course, go to claremont.org, go to claremontreviewbooks.com, americanmind.org, or to check out the latest stuff in DC, dc.claremont.org. We will be holding a alumni retreat in an undisclosed location somewhere around the greater swamp in a few days, and we expect about 200 alumni there, which will be wonderful. If you're Antifa and you're listening, by the time you hear those details, it will take you too long to get there and come and find us. And if you do, security will be waiting for you. Yeah. Thanks, as always, to our production and engineering crew, the brothers Gannon, Ryan, and Jake. And please rate the show, spread the word. If you have bad things to say, just keep them to yourself. And I'll preview too. We keep teasing it, but I think next week we're going to go vidcast. So keep an eye out for that on YouTube, etc. You'll be able to see our diverse sets behind us, or backdrops anyway. Spencer's is actually just a nice part of his home. So Mike and I are really the AstroTurf sets. So, come out, mock us. It'll be fun. Keep listening. We love you. And we'll talk to you next week.